Oh, hello there. Welcome back. So if you're familiar with my content over the last 2 videos, you would know I've been hyping up the release of Shadows Awaken a lot, because not only do the teasers look spectacular, but the character designs, atmosphere, and vibe of the game all caught my attention like no other fan game has before. And to give a brief summary for those who didn't watch my fan games video, Shadows Awaken is a psychological horror Five Nights at Freddy's fan game project in a style similar to PT and Silent Hill, revolving around Michael Afton after the bite of 83 and his father's springlocking. And as of writing this script, I just finished up chapter 1 thanks to an early access key given to me by Kyesen, and in all honesty, I'm really glad to say that despite my insanely high expectations for this project, it has completely blown me away. Never before have I been such a big fan of a fan game's characters, environments, and gameplay since the joy of creation first released. So in today's video, I wanted to take a deep dive into the game and find out exactly why Shadows Awaken to me is the perfect FNAF fan game. So without any further ado, let's get started. Starting off with the gameplay, we get a quick intro cutscene that establishes some vague lore stuff before we wake up on the floor of a laundry room and exit out to the main house, where we're finally given full control of our character. And after some brief exploration, we finally head upstairs and find a key in the FNAF 4 bedroom, which we then use to open up the one locked door in the house, which appears to be the crying child's room, with a Freddy plush lying in wait on the bed. And upon interacting with the plush, the nightmare truly begins, as upon returning back downstairs and finding a flashlight, we're taught one of the game's main mechanics, light bulbs. See, periodically, these wall-mounted lamps all around the house will begin to flicker and die out, and using light bulbs found in drawers around the house, we were able to reactivate these lights for a short amount of time. Why is this important, you may ask? Well, that's because our protagonist has a debilitating fear of the darkness, and because of this, if you're stuck in the dark for too long, which is very easy considering how slow Michael moves, you begin to experience a panic attack, which distorts the visuals and audio of the game and removes your ability to use another main mechanic, that being focus. The focus is a unique mechanic. By holding down space, the player is able to hear sounds beyond the physical world, and the longer you focus, the louder these sounds become. However, this comes at the cost of the player being completely immobilized while using focus. Focus as a mechanic is mainly used to track objective locations on the map via a sound cue, or to listen out for Freddy's breathing while he's completely invisible to the naked eye. And don't worry, I'll get back to all of that in a minute. The last mechanic we're introduced to is the camera, which is used to repel Freddy when he's visible, and as mentioned before, if you combine the camera with focus, you can pinpoint exactly where Freddy is, and these mechanics are perfect for the kind of game Shadows Awaken is. The Shadows Awaken takes place in a relatively small house, with almost every action the player does taking time and precision to actually work, such as opening doors and drawers. And this heavy emphasis on taking your time lets the player truly learn and perfect these skills for their final challenge, of locating the ghost who is hiding around the house 9 times as the lights around the house begin to burn out, forcing us to act quickly and decisively, relying on only the information these mechanics provide us with, and it creates some really tense moments as the anxiety meter forces the player to make hasty decisions that could cost them their life, especially when you don't know exactly where Freddy is, but you know he could be anywhere nearby lying in wait for an opportunity to strike. And all it is only made tenser, but it gains heavy emphasis on audio. Everything in Shadows Awaken is so quiet and eerie that it requires you to increase your volume much higher than normal, forcing you to listen out to the small sounds and bumps, and because of this, every jump scare and every ghost encounter hits that much harder because you're forced to listen to every little sound to try and identify where Freddy could potentially be. But of course, no game's gameplay can be perfect, and Shadows Awaken does have some issues. Despite my previous joke about the movement speed, I found it to be a little bit too slow for my liking, especially in my attention span, as by the time I got to where I needed to be, because there was no objectives list or markers, there were times where I just straight up forgot what I was supposed to be doing and had to just wander around the map until I eventually died to Freddy or remembered what I was supposed to be doing. And other than a minor bug that removed my ability to use the flashlight or camera at all, forcing me to restart the game completely and redo everything, Shadows Awaken is a very well polished game with no game-breaking glitches at all. I am a little disappointed, however, with the way upstairs was mostly abandoned after finding the Freddy plush, with nothing else guiding the player upstairs other than the odd ghost spot. But these are only minor bumps in an almost perfect gameplay loop. So with all that said, let's move on to the stunning visuals of this game. Shadows Awaken is a beautiful game, and you probably wouldn't believe me if I told you that it was made on a $300 laptop. But here's the proof. The entire game reminds me of the first area of the baker's house in Resident Evil 7, and both the upstairs and downstairs feel so unique from each other. The downstairs feels like a modern house that's crumbling apart with cracked plaster and holes in the ceiling, whereas upstairs feels more like a grandparent's house with colourful yet peeling wallpaper and homemade paintings sticky taped to the wall almost everywhere, invoking a sense that this was a household filled with love before certain events. And the environment here has so many details that help tell the game's story, like laundry baskets filled to the brim and trash tossed in all corners. And while I'll expand on a lot of this later in the video, I wanted to point out the 2 plates on the dinner table, as despite us knowing that William is never coming home because he's been spring locked in some back room, this Michael holds out hope as he's clearly a wreck and unable to take care of himself, so every night he makes a plate of food for himself and his father in hopes that he will walk back through that door, and this adds a whole new sense of dread to the environment that I absolutely adore. As we now know from context clues that we are well and truly alone, with our house crumbling around us as we frantically try and hold everything together and hang on to our past and those important to us, with a constant ticking clock in the background being the only form of ambient sound other than the lights dying out, as if Michael is counting the seconds until his father or brother come home. And it is just some wonderful environmental storytelling and just a great environment, period. Me personally, I just spent my first 20 minutes looking around the environment because of how much there was to see, and I encourage you that when you play Shadows Awaken to pay attention to the time and effort put into this environment, because you will 100% be missing out if you don't. Another amazing addition to the visuals and audio is the anxiety meter. See, as it fills, the faint sound of a heartbeat can be heard, slowly rising and quaking, and once it fully fills, Michael begins to have a panic attack, speaking frantically as the silence around him is replaced by whispers and the environment distorts and warps into a shade of bright red and black. And it's a great effect that really allows the player to immerse themselves in Michael's head. And of course, I can't talk about the visuals without touching on the amazing design of Freddy. When I saw him in teasers, I knew he was going to be a good character design, but I thought the fact he was going to be another long, lanky antagonist was going to hold him back from truly being great. But seeing him in game twitching and moving as he towers over the player, barely fitting into the hallways and rooms he stalks, is a whole different story. When I first saw him, I was so terrified yet intrigued at his design, and I might as well just let that clip play out because words just cannot describe how I felt during that encounter. Fuck off. What? Look at it. Oh no. I'm gonna get closer to him. Hey, bud. I don't think he's meant to be visible. What? Now, little side note, just look at this render, okay? Like, it's so cool, and I love the current trend of having cool pieces of art for your main antagonist once they kill you. I don't know, man, this just style speaks to me. Now, you may be thinking, he's not that bad. Well, remember how I said he could go invisible? Yeah, the only way to truly know where Freddy is to constantly be using the focus mechanic, which sticks you in place, and having your volume up high enough to listen out for his breathing and laughing as he waits for you to fall into his trap. And with that said, let's actually unpack the horror of Shadows Awaken, shall we? When I had first booted up Shadows Awaken, I was skeptical that despite how cool the game looked, it wasn't going to truly scare me. And as I said before, my expectations were through the roof. And as I played through the intro segment and tutorials, while they had great atmosphere, there was a tiny worry in the back of my head that this game wasn't going to scare me at all. That was until the first ghost encounter. Wait, cool, we need to move. What the fuck? And before I unpack this, it is important to understand how Shadows Awaken builds up to these moments. See, Shadows Awaken works so hard to make you feel that Freddy's presence is everywhere, and yet he is also nowhere at the same time. He feels like a beast stalking these halls, with no room being completely safe from him, as even our quote-unquote safe rooms have a chance for Freddy to spawn in them, and this heavy emphasis on audio for Freddy is used against the player with the ghost character. There are moments where I was planning my next move underneath the light, only to hear a door behind me get slammed as something inside was bashing against it, over and over, crying and shouting Michael's name. And the feeling of opening that door to be met with pure emptiness and silence is such an unnerving feeling, and really cemented Shadows Awaken as an experience that never truly lets the player feel safe. It's great to see a FNAF fan game that understands how to use its environments and characters in such a unique and horrifying way, with every mechanic and enemy only working to enhance the dread and horror every time you encounter them. And now for the final segment, which I touched upon earlier, but now I'm going to go into a deep dive about it, the story. Now, like all fan games, Shadows Awaken of course has a story, but this one caught my attention mainly because I find it to be a lot more interesting of a story than the mainline one. So if you're like 99% of everyone else in the world who just doesn't care for a random fan game story, just entertain me here for like 2 minutes. The game opens up in a void with a window staring out to nothing as an unknown voice talks to us and pretty much just gives lore reasons for mechanics, which is always nice to see. And as mentioned before, Shadows Awaken most likely takes place after the events of FNAF 1, 2, 4, along with FNAF 3's minigames thanks to his radio broadcast that talked about the missing children's incident and William going missing, with Fazbear's now being left in Michael's hands. So with all of this in mind, what conclusions can we draw about Freddy, the ghost, and the overall story? Well, with Freddy and the Ghost, I'd assume it's a situation similar to Ultimate Custom Night, where instead of Cassidy trapping William in a purgatory, it's the crying child, and the main reason I think this is because of how Freddy kills you. As to do so, he picks you up to his mouth and chomps down, just how Michael killed the crying child. And once we find the ghost 9 times and escape back to the laundry room, we're taken back to that same window the game began with, except everything's now red and chaotic, with this game's fantastic Bonnie design staring through the window. And this is heavily implied to represent or even be Bonnie Bro, with this evil villain monologue that would be amiss not to read out to you, because it is just that good. You made it. It appears to me you now realize of what those eyes are capable of. You see their shade. You hear their whispers. Michael, does this look familiar to you? Can you remember their faces? It's your best friend's favorite bunny. Perhaps, maybe even your best friend himself. Can you sense them in the dark? That suffocating weight, the chill that crawls beneath your skin. Every shadow is a reminder. Every whisper a prelude to the inevitable. Every breath you take pulls them closer. Now, watch closely, Michael, as the darkness breathes and the shadows awaken. And I mean, come on, that has to be one of the best endings to a FNAF fan game you've seen in a while. I'm mainly a huge fan of the story and everything it builds up because of how it characterizes Michael. Because Michael in the mainline games, he's more just like the silent protagonist. But this makes Michael feel like someone who is actually guilty for his actions and has a reason for coming back every night to put the soul to rest. And has a reason for actually being there in FNAF 6. Other than just being like, oh yeah, I feel bad, I want to release all these souls, you know what I mean? It just makes me so interested in where the story's gonna go and where chapter 2 is gonna go, chapter 3, chapter 4, however far it goes. And it's extremely exciting to know that Kyesen already has plans for chapter 2 ready to go before this game's even out for the public. So who knows how quickly we'll get to see chapter 2. And I have a feeling if the team keeps up this quality that chapter 1 had, this is gonna be a game that can rival giants such as Joy Creation, and I'm all here for it. I went into Shadows Awaken very concerned, mainly because of how much I was hyping up this game in my own head, and how I was worried that it wasn't going to deliver on my own expectations. And I can proudly say, as someone who's played almost every FNAF fan game there is, Shadows Awaken has proven itself to be a fantastic FNAF fan game. And the thought that Shadows Awaken almost never got made is wild to me because of how passionate Kyesen seems about the project, and how well he and the team understand horror, and have used that knowledge to craft such a fun experience, to the point that I can see this game having a massive impact on the future of FNAF fan games, with its very interesting take on a FNAF story, some really unique mechanics that are utilized almost perfectly, breathtaking environments, and a Freddy design that will stick with me for years to come. And in all honesty, if Scott was ever looking for a wave 2 of Fazbear Fanverse games, I honestly think Shadows Awaken would be near the top of the list on considerations. To everyone who worked on the game, soak in every piece of praise people are about to give you, and take what works really well in this chapter and continue to expand on it. And I encourage you to take your time with chapter 2 like you have with chapter 1, because it was entirely worth it. Now, is this chapter perfect like my title suggests? No, not entirely, no game ever is. But to me, it is damn near perfect, and I am bouncing off the walls with ideas for where the story could go next, and despite this video almost entirely spoiling everything this game has to offer, I still urge you to go and experience chapter 1 for yourself, and make sure to follow the game on GameJolt on your way out. But that's all for me. It is late finishing the script and I'm tired, so I'll see you all next time. Bye bye!